Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I got a green bike behind me and a yellow bike. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go over these two bikes, how they're set up real quick. Then I'm going to take them each with the GoPro. I'll loop up through the woods up here. I'm going to use a stopwatch, kind of time each one when I do the lap. Then I'm going to come back and I'll just do an overview over them and kind of let you know what I think, between the two bikes. So here, I'm going to kind of just go over these quick how they're set up. They're both set up very similar. Okay, we got pipe, moose rack. The tires, both rear tires are AMS Bite MX tires. So they both got the same rear tire. They both have oversized bars with bar risers. Trying to think, they both got skid plates on them. This bike has the pipe also with a JD Jet kit. This bike has the pipe, but there's no fuel tuner on it. They both got, tail tighties on the back. As far as gearing too, both these bikes are even geared so that you can run comfortable. You can your cruising speed is 65 miles per hour, and you can get to 70 if you need to, but they're wrung out a little bit. You probably even do 75. So they're both set up very evenly. One of the only main differences is this bike has an oversized tank on it with some extra fuel in it. This bike does not. It will eventually. That's the next mod for this, is going to get an oversized tank. So what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to hop on these bikes. I got a stopwatch on the Garmin I'll put on each bike when I run it. I'm going to do one little loop, matching loop up here in the woods. I'll throw on my Garnier boots and my O'Neill slat helmet. And I'm going to get up in here, give them a rip. Then after I'm done, I will kind of go over the bikes as far as how they're set up from the factory and what I think of them, a little bit of the build quality. So stay tuned here, and I'm going to go on the bikes and take a rip. All right, I did my little rip, my little loop. So what I come up with, now you watched the video, if you watched the whole thing, you saw I had an issue with both bikes that far as time-wise offset each other. I overshot a turn in the DRZ, plus I had a little neutral issue right after that I missed neutral, or I hit neutral. And the KLX, the one little section of single track, I overshot the turn and had a little issue. But they offset each other as far as time-wise, but I completed that little loop on the DRZ. That was 4 minutes, roughly right around 4 minutes flat. And the KLX, it was done right around 4 minutes and 12 seconds, I believe. So there was a 12-second differential. A lot of the issues were I could pull the higher gear and just go a little bit faster with the torque on the DRZ, as opposed to where the KLX I'd be in first gear, especially that first section of single track. I had to stay in first gear to keep the power up to go up it, where the DRZ had the taller first gear and it went right up over a little faster. So as far as that, I mean, now the KLX feels much more nimble, much more nimble. When I did that loop that I did in the woods, whether I was on the dirt road or in the single track, it feels much more nimble and much easier to ride. Weight-wise, right now, my DRZ with all my mods, it should be roughly right around 311 pounds. The KLX I have right on, for my figures, right about 290 right now with everything that I have done on it. Now that's minus the moose rack. That weight is not considering the moose rack. Those are not always on there. So it's still a tough decision. I mean, DRZ, you got carbureted. Now this bike is carbed and jetted. Power-wise, the best way I can relate this is the KLX, the way I have it right now with the pipe on it. If you buy a DRZ400 stock, this is still just slightly underpowered to a stock DRZ400. Your DRZ400 is definitely going to have more torque across the board on the 400. So suspension-wise, on that loop, they're almost dead on. Like, I could not tell a difference between the little harsh hits, the curve when you're doing the turns, laying over, braking, you know, the sag on it and everything, all basically very, very similar. Now, of course, you have a little more adjustment on your forks on the DRZ400. That being said, so you have your carburetor on the DRZ, you got your fuel injection. Now on the DRZ, you have a little bit of a dated dash, and it's a little bit tough to figure out how to set your trip and your time and stuff like that. And again, no fuel gauge or warning light in the DRZ. Now here's your instrument panel on the KLX. Now you do have a fuel warning light on this, and it's a little more up to date. It's not as antiquated, and it's easier to set your functions on than the DRZ. But they're very, as far as riding in the woods, which one am I going to pick? I prefer to ride the KLX just because it is so much more nimble, and you notice that little bit of weight difference, even though it's 20 pounds. Even pushing these around the garage, this feels like it weighs 50 pounds more than when you're pushing this around. I mean, you definitely, when you ride them back to back, there is definitely a power difference. I mean, without a doubt, you just have, it almost feels like you have gobs more torque on the DRZ. But I would rather ride this bike in the woods. It's just easier to handle, much more comfortable. It just feels so much more lightweight. This bike, what I will probably do with this bike, I'm not going to sell it at the moment, but I will probably put, I have a charging port on it, probably heated grips, and probably put the Tusk pannier racks on it. I will use this probably for like a light adventure type bike or some longer rides, throw a seat concept seat on it possibly, whereas this is going to be my all-around bike here. I mean, I absolutely love this thing. And like I said, I've had, my other video I had mentioned I had a CRF 250L for 6 years, fully modded, pipe, controller, gearing change, as a WR also. In 2012, I bought one of those new, modded it all up. This KLX is definitely my favorite out of those 3 bikes. It just feels so nimble, it's so slim. I like the power delivery with the pipe on it. The pipe has made a huge difference in the power delivery on this bike. It's still not, this power is still not in the class of the 400. I mean, that's for sure. And even another thing with the Suzuki, you know, you get, everything's a little built better. I mean, even your lever here, this is solid aluminum, whereas opposed to KLX, you just have this little steel one, which will bend, you know, easily. But even the cables and like you got plastic. These are like plastic nuts up here and fittings on your cables. You know, that's just a little less build quality than you have on, you know, your DRZ. You know, the cables have, you know, metal nuts and fittings on them, and everything's just a little bit beefier and a little better, to me, slightly better built than the KLX. But that being said, I'm going to be honest, if I had to pick one to do everything from your basic fast trail riding like I just did to long, basically adventure rides, I would have to take, even though I'd rather have fuel injection, I would have to pick the DRZ400 to be the all-around bike if you were going to spend the money and get one bike to go from fast enduro riding or long trips and adventure type riding. I would prefer the DRZ400 just for the extra torque in the woods and for the fact of hauling your luggage. So that's my input on the two. If you have any questions, put them down below. I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. If you put a question in, remember to like and subscribe and hop on whatever you got and get outside. See everybody later.